All right, we are back with the roundtable. We have one last topic to touch on. Is it time to ditch COVID restrictions for all travel? And it's because there are different standards for cruise ships versus airlines. Today, the CDC announcing cruise companies will not be subject to a COVID warning system, and it will remain up to them whether they want to enforce vaccination and masking. Yet the TSA still requires masking on public transit like buses, trains, and of course, airplanes and in airports. So we want to ask the group, why are there two different systems? Shibani, should we just be letting airlines decide?
Yeah, and passengers, I would say, Nicole. I don't know about you. I live in the Bay Area, and I'm thoroughly confused about where I need to wear a mask and where I don't need to mask. And I show up at a Starbucks, and I'm the only one in a mask, and then I suddenly feel embarrassed. I think this is what we are in, thankfully, with the pandemic back in hindsight. And if you ask the major CEOs of all the big airline companies, Delta Airlines CEO just in the last week saying that he believes that the mandates will be lifted in April, and it's for good reason. Because the health implications are not there. Even the flight attendants are not necessarily clamoring for it in the same way. And frankly, this industry has been suffering. I mean, the industry last year lost about $51 billion. They're only going to lose $12 billion this year. I guess that's progress, but right. The industry is really suffering, and the mask mandates just keep people from reliving their normal lives.
And Rick, we're talking about two different agencies here, obviously. So CDC making that decision when it comes to cruise ships, TSA making the decision when it comes to public transportation. But, you know, why are there two different systems here, do you think?
Well, because the most highly educated idiots in history have been running the world for 2 years. There is absolutely zero constitutional authority for either of these agencies to have required this. It never should have been required in the first place. Should have been up to the companies. And then, as we've already said, it should have been up to the individuals. It's ridiculous. There's no science behind this. There is zero science behind requiring masks from the beginning. Within 5 years of Spanish flu in 1918, those very few cities that had small mask mandates only in the crowded areas, the scientific community all agreed that that was worthless. It didn't do any good. At some point, we'll finally admit that about masks and COVID-19. So stop making people have the tension and the confusion and all of those things. If one CEO would stand up and say, we're not going to enforce your unconstitutional, unscientific orders anymore, the rest of the airlines would follow suit.
Well, speaking of the science there, Rick, you know, there was a 2021 study that showed if one COVID infected person is sitting on a plane unmasked, nearby passengers face infection risk of up to 99.6%. Really quickly, Marc, does it make sense to have two different systems in place here?
Two different systems don't make sense. I have to disagree with Rick. Again, I've read the studies. Masks do make a difference. Not all masks, surgical masks don't, but N95 masks in airplanes do make a difference. The study you just referenced from the Journal of Travel Medicine is just one example of that. But in general, I think at some point we have to have
all of the other studies.
I think at some point we have to have a coherent policy here.
I love the debate here, you guys. I hate to cut you off. We got to toss it over to Leland, but Shibani, Rick, Marc, thank you so much. We will, of course, have you back on. Let's throw it over to Leland Vittert for On Balance. And Leland, are you ready to get rid of that mask when you fly?
I've been ready to get rid of it from the very beginning. So yes, there we go.
All right.
We'll see what happens.
Thank you for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.